Hey guys, today I'll be taking a look at this Galil SAR Battlefield Pickup SBR Ready, made by Southern Tactical. The SAR is a shorter barrel variant of the Galil series of rifles, so what Southern Tactical means by SBR Ready is they've pinned on a 3-inch flash hider to extend the 13-inch barrel out to the 16-inch minimum. And of course, if you wanted to go the SBR route, you could ground that weld off and then drill the pin out to remove the flash hider, and then you would have your original 13-inch barrel length. The kit itself is built on a Tortort receiver. It has laser engraved markings that I can only assume are accurate. I didn't go through and try to verify anything, but you can see in the video if you like the look of them or not. I think it's a nice detail. I also mentioned the term Battlefield Pickup in addition to SBR Ready. So what that means in this instance is that Southern Tactical took a kit, built a new rifle out of it, and then artificially wore the new parts to match the condition of the rest of the kit. So some people view Battlefield Pickup as sort of an acid wash jeans hipstery gun thing to do, but in this case I feel like it's almost a restorative process, because they aren't taking a new gun and roughing it up to make it look well used. They're taking a used kit and just matching the new parts to the condition of the kit as much as possible. So what we end up with is a complete rifle that likely looks like it would have whenever it was turned in at the end of its life cycle. Now, the downside to that is that the parts are well used. There's a lot of play and slop in things like the stock, in the handguard, in the dust cover, which also happens to be where the rear sights are, so we'll talk about that in a bit. And none of this is me complaining about the condition of the gun. I knew what I was getting into when I got it, but it's something worth mentioning if you're looking at picking one up, especially if you're a particular person about cosmetics, because these are all decidedly mostly cosmetic issues. So this did have holes where the night sights would be. It's my understanding that those night sights have tritium, so they're often missing from kits. I ended up getting a complete Meprolite kit along with some parts from Kevin Seibert. You can find him on YouTube if you look around. And I dropped those on because I am a compulsive hole filler. So as far as function goes, at the long range, this gun performed decently over the course of about 400 rounds. I did have one failure where a casing didn't eject and ended up in the dust cover stuck behind the fire control group, but I don't believe that this was a gun issue. That day I also had my Markelmar Sepme L, and I had my Springfield Hellion with me, and both of those guns jammed using the same ammo, which was Wolf 55 grain, in the same lot. I had a light primer strike, and I had another just general jam failure to eject. So I hadn't had any issues with either of those guns previously, so I'm just chalking this one up to Steelcase Wolf acting up. Even if it was a gun failure, 1 round in 400 isn't too bad. I did try a number of original steel Galil magazines, which were listed in good condition when I picked them up, and I picked up some aftermarket Tapco mags as well, just in case, and they all ran totally fine. That was one of the issues that has happened with previous series of Galil rifles, not made by this builder, is that there has been mixed results using original and aftermarket magazines. This rifle came with one original magazine and a nice little tan Atlantic Firearms branded carry case. So my single biggest complaint about the gun is the trigger, and I mentioned that in the short that I made a few months back, but it came to me with the worst trigger slap I've ever experienced. And I used to have an MPA Defender pistol, which actually includes like this heavy rubber condom thing that slips over the trigger just for the trigger slap, and I fired a full auto Galil ARM, and that one also had a lot of trigger slap, but this was far worse. It was so bad that by the end of the first 20 rounds that I fired, I could not feel the tip of my finger. So, and I realized that I was not going to be able to shoot this gun much at all. It would not be a fun experience. So I ended up replacing the trigger with an ALG AKT. That resolved the issue, but I will caution that that was not a direct drop-in replacement. I had to remove some material from the trigger to get it to fit in the receiver, and over the course of that process, I also ended up customizing one of those FCG trigger pin retaining plates because I just had a nightmare of a time with the little clothespin style retainer that it came with. So if anyone's interested specifically in what I did to get those parts to fit, let me know in the comments. I can post more about it on a different platform, but I can't really go into too much detail on YouTube because of their we'll call it hostile and inconsistent enforcement of firearms modification. So as far as accuracy goes, I will qualify by saying that I'm not great with iron sights at a distance. I'm very nearsighted. So I generally assume that any gun with a non-magnified optic is going to be more accurate than I am beyond about 50 yards. And there is no consideration for mounting optics on the Galil SAR. And that's fine, I didn't buy it for that. I already have two Aces, they both have optics. I bought it to have another Retro 223 in the collection, but I wanted to call that out before I start talking about accuracy. So I was shooting Wolf 55 grain steel cased FMJ ammo at 100 yards, and I was getting around 8-inch groups. I was shooting at a 10-inch target. I was consistently staying within the target, and my groups looked like shotgun patterns. So this could be any number of things. I'm mainly attributing it to the iron sight issue that I mentioned before. In other words, a personal issue more than a gun issue. However, going back to what I said before about the loose dust cover, there is a lot of play in this dust cover on this rifle. That's where the rear sight is. So I can't imagine that this doesn't have any impact on consistency between shots. Someone who is more familiar with the platform could weigh in with their experience, as I'm not sure what the general internet hive mind opinion is about the stability of original Galil dust cover mounted irons. But all that to say, my shots were still all within the A and C zone at 100 yards, which honestly is probably about as good as I could do with that combination of irons and ammo and so on. So that's sufficient for me and my own capabilities, I think, with the iron sights. Hey everybody, it's Editing Jay here. So over the course of editing this video together, I realized that I left out some basic information about what it's actually like to shoot one of these. For some reason, whenever I make videos, I tend to feel like the people that I'm talking to have more experience with whatever I'm talking about than I do, but I'm guessing that that's probably really not the case. Typically, whenever I'm looking at videos, I'm looking to get an idea or a sense of what it's like for that person using whatever it is that I'm watching a video of, because I don't have that experience. So I'm going to try to kind of convey that as best as I can. Just a few quick observances on what this was like for me to shoot. So one of the first things that I noticed is that this gun feels really pretty front heavy. It's pretty tank-like in its feel. Now, it's not so ridiculously heavy that it feels unusual for a pretty much all metal gun made during the time that these guns were produced, but it does feel quite front heavy. So if you're used to shooting modern guns, modern made ARs and so on, and piston ARs, this is probably going to feel pretty heavy to you. At least it did to me. Now, not uncomfortably heavy, again, not so out of line for what it is and for the era that it came from, but it is pretty front heavy feeling. Even with the stock extended, the stock is aluminum, I'm given to understand, which they did to save weight. It doesn't really balance it very well. So all of this weight is pretty much right here in this Galil. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I noticed with it is that it is pretty punchy. So again, 223, not particularly heavy on the recoil side, but this one feels pretty punchy for a 223. I'd say it's on a higher end of recoil for any 223 that I've shot, and I'm including other 223 AKs in that, because this is effectively at its heart is a 223 AK. So something worth mentioning. I'm not going to say it's uncomfortable or even not fun to shoot, but it is pretty punchy, and it does have a pretty aggressive ejection pattern on the empty shell casings. So some kind of cool things with the Galil that I always liked on these old style Galils is this extended charging handle that comes over the top. I assume that they did this to make it, it's probably unpleasant to listen to make it easy to reach over the top and pull without changing the firing position on your primary hand if you're right-handed. So that's kind of a neat thing. I always thought that was a cool little addition to these. And also you have what is effectively an ambi selector, sort of. It's on the left side as well as the right side, and they are connected. They're linked through the receiver, which is where you have issues with getting trigger retaining plates, trigger pin retaining plates in there. So anyway, I think that's pretty... Oh, one other thing too. There is this guard here for the mag release, so you can't really very easily do cool guy tactical reloads with it. So if that's an issue for you, then be aware of that, I guess, for this. So I think that's pretty much it. So I'm going to come back to the slightly more produced version of this, a little bit less off the cuff, at least as produced as I get. So back over there. Bye. So overall, I'm impressed with the reliability of this gun. There have been a number of Galil builds over the years, and they've all had wildly varying quality control between them, depending on who was making them and when they were being made and the conditions of the kits and so on. So I'm glad to have found one that seems to be 100% functional. If it was not for that trigger, I'd recommend one without reservation. But being able to modify an FCG myself, it wasn't an issue for me. I could see how that could be for some people. For me, I can modify trigger grips okay, so I didn't have any issue overcoming that problem, but it is something to be aware of. If you go to pick one up and you have that problem, you may have to modify a trigger group to make it more comfortable for you. So those are my thoughts on this Southern Tactical Galil SAR Battlefield Pickup SBR Ready from Atlantic Firearms. I hope you're having a great year so far, and I will see you around next time.